The wind picked up as the sun slipped below the horizon, casting an eerie, molten glow over the ocean. The beach, once bustling with daytime revelers, was now an expanse of shadows and whispers. I had come here to find solitude, to escape the city's incessant noise, but the solitude was quickly turning into something else, something unnerving. I set up my small tent at the edge of the dunes, close enough to the water to hear the waves, but far enough to avoid the creeping tide. The rhythmic crash of the waves had always been soothing to me, but tonight it felt different. Each wave seemed to bring a sense of foreboding, a message in a language I couldn't understand but felt in my bones. As darkness fully enveloped the beach, the moon rose, casting a pale light that turned the sand into a surreal, ghostly landscape. I sat by a small campfire, its flickering flames offering the only warmth against the cold, damp air. The sound of the crackling wood was a welcome distraction from the strange sensation of being watched. The first sign that something was wrong came with the fog. It rolled in from the sea, thick and impenetrable, obscuring everything beyond a few feet. The firelight barely penetrated it, making it seem as though I was trapped in a bubble of light surrounded by darkness. I strained my ears, trying to catch any sound beyond the hiss of the surf and the occasional pop of the fire. Then I heard it, a faint, mournful cry carried on the wind. It was distant, almost indistinguishable from the sounds of the night, but it sent a chill down my spine. I stood up, peering into the fog, trying to locate the source. My mind raced, conjuring images of shipwrecks and lost souls, stories of ghostly apparitions that haunted the coastlines. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small and hollow in the vast emptiness. There was no reply, just the endless repetition of the waves and that faint, sorrowful cry. I shook my head, trying to dispel the creeping dread. It was probably just a bird or some animal, I told myself. Nothing to be afraid of. I forced myself to sit back down, feeding more driftwood into the fire. The flames leaped higher for a moment, casting long, dancing shadows. I glanced around, my nerves on edge, and then I saw it, a figure standing at the water's edge. It was barely visible through the fog, a dark silhouette against the pale sand. My heart pounded as I stared, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It didn't move, just stood there, facing the ocean. I called out again, louder this time, but there was no response. Gathering my courage, I grabbed my flashlight and walked towards the figure. Each step felt heavy as if the sand was trying to pull me back. The beam of my flashlight cut through the fog, illuminating the figure in stark white light. It was a woman, her clothes torn and soaked, her hair hanging in wet, tangled strands over her face. She stood motionless, her head bowed, water lapping at her feet. I shivered, an instinctive fear gripping me. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice trembling. She didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge my presence. I reached out a hand, intending to touch her shoulder, but the moment my fingers brushed her, she vanished. 1 second she was there, solid and real, and the next she was gone, leaving only the fog and the empty beach. I stumbled back, my heart racing. This couldn't be real. Ghosts didn't exist, I told myself. There had to be some explanation. Maybe I was tired or the fog was playing tricks on my eyes. I turned back towards my campfire, eager to return to its warmth and light. But the fire was out. The campsite was in disarray. My tent collapsed and my belongings scattered. Panic surged through me. Someone or something had been here. I scanned the area, the beam of my flashlight darting from shadow to shadow, but there was nothing, no one. I hastily tried to rebuild the fire, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the matches. As the flames finally caught and began to grow, I felt a momentary sense of relief, but then I heard the whispering. It was all around me, a chorus of soft voices just beyond the edge of the firelight. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable, malicious, mocking. I stood, backing closer to the fire, as if its warmth could protect me from whatever was out there. And then I saw them, figures emerging from the fog, their shapes indistinct and shifting, like shadows made flesh. They moved slowly, deliberately, circling the fire, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. My breath caught in my throat as I realized they weren't fully human. Their forms were twisted and misshapen, their faces contorted in expressions of anguish and rage. I tried to speak, to plead with them, but no sound came out. They drew closer, their whispers growing louder, more insistent. The fire flickered, struggling against the damp air, and I knew that if it went out, I would be lost. Desperation took hold. I grabbed a burning branch from the fire, wielding it like a weapon. The figures recoiled slightly, but didn't retreat. I swung the branch wildly, the flames sputtering, trying to keep them at bay. One of them lunged forward, and I saw its face clearly, a grotesque mask of pain, eyes hollow and empty. I screamed, the sound ripping from my throat, and thrust the branch at it. The figure dissipated like smoke, but others took its place. They pressed closer, their whispers rising to a fever pitch, a cacophony of torment. My vision blurred, my mind reeling. I couldn't keep this this up, couldn't fight them off forever. And then, through the din, I heard a voice. A single, clear voice calling my name. I turned to see through the fog, and there she was, the woman from the water's edge. She stood just beyond the reach of the firelight. Her expression is almost serene. "Come with me," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You're not safe here." I didn't question her. I couldn't afford to. I dropped the branch and ran to her, the figures parting as I passed, their whispers fading into silence. She led me away from the fire and the beach towards the dunes. As we climbed, the fog began to lift, the oppressive atmosphere easing. We reached the top of the dunes, and I turned to look back. The beach was empty, the fire a distant, dying ember. The fog had cleared, revealing the calm, moonlit ocean. I turned to thank the woman, but she was gone, vanished like a wisp of smoke. I spent the rest of the night huddled in the dunes, watching the waves. Dawn broke slowly, the sky turning from black to gray to the soft pink of morning. I gathered my scattered belongings, my hands still trembling, and left the beach without looking back. I never found out who or what the woman was, or what the figures in the fog wanted. But I knew one thing: the beach was not a place for living after dark. The ocean kept its secrets, and some were best left undisturbed.